Hello, magical people of the internet. I am Jen, and welcome to my vlog I never thought I would, where we discuss doing things that we never thought we would do and the unexpected places they can take us. I have an incredible guest today. His name is Kim Curry. He's an author, he's a former broadcaster and radio programmer. Welcome to the show, Kim.
Hi, Jennifer. How are you today?
I am fantastic.
Good.
Happy 2021.
It's about time. Let's go. Let's move it. Have you had your shot yet? You got a shot yet?
I have not had the shot yet. Actually, up in Canada, they are not rolling them out as quickly as in some of the other countries.
I
So
see.
I'm still waiting up here. It'll be a few months probably.
It'll be a few months for me too. I'm 65 years old, so I'm in one of those categories. The 70 plus are going now. I'll be in the 65 plus, and that'll be still in a couple of months. But we all got to get them because we all got to go on with our lives, please.
We are in a place that we never thought we would be, and that's what pushed me to do this show and start talking about things that we never thought we would do. So you had a very fascinating life as a broadcaster, radio programmer. You got to meet all sorts of fancy people and go to fancy different places. So I know you have a, a laundry list of things that you never thought you would do. So why don't you pick one of them to talk about today and let us know what it was and where it led you.
Well, I think it really came about because of what happened to me. After 33 years of being on the radio in America, in some really great cities like San Antonio, Texas, Baltimore, Maryland, Washington, D.C. I spent 25 of 33 years in Miami, Florida. And as you said, I got to do a lot of great things. Of the last 9 years of my career, I got to run the most listened to radio station in the Southeast USA, Power 96 in Miami. It's still there, not quite as famous as it was when I was there. But when you're the guy who runs the biggest station in Miami, it's a pretty important thing. So being in LA and being at the Grammys and meeting big stars and going to big parties was something that I got used to. My wife was on my arm at the Grammys every year. And then, it's funny. If you think back to the tsunami, which happened around 2004, around Christmas 2004, I was home in my state of Colorado. Of course, I was working in Miami, but I was home visiting my mother here in Colorado. And my mom, at the end of the tsunami, she didn't even know what the word meant. But remember, we hadn't even seen anything like that ever before because there'd never been a visual, a televised tsunami ever. And we were mesmerized by what we were seeing. It was devastating. And when I was leaving, my mother said, "There's something wrong with you." And I said, "Mom, I've just been watching this terrible thing. I'm stressed at work." And she said, "No, there's something really wrong with you," which made me think I needed to go see the doctor because I'd been not paying attention to what she was talking about. She was noticing that I wasn't walking straight, that my right eye was fluttering. So I did go to the doctor and eventually was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. The process took about 3 months because it's not a very easy disease to diagnose. But that forced me into retirement because as a radio guy, as a performance artist like you are, and I'm sorry, sometimes the MS precludes my mouth working correctly, but as a performance artist, it's hard. It's a vibe. It's a thing that you are committed to. It's a thing that I would wake up for 30 years and think, today I've got to be on the radio. What am I going to do to make my show better than what it was yesterday? And suddenly, I'm worrying about my radio show and I'm worrying about the big part of the radio station because I'm in charge of that. But I was so distracted by the disease because it was coming on so strong. I couldn't walk within a matter of months. I lost my right shoulder was bad. My right eye was going bad. And I couldn't do my work. I couldn't do it the way I wanted to do it. So I was forced into retirement. The disease really beat me up for 8 years. It, well, I was walking when I left my job, and a short 2 years later, I was confined to a wheelchair, and I've been there ever since. It's damaged it's there are lesions that appear on the brain with an MS patient. and you lose what they call the myelin. It's the coating around the nerves that goes away. And in time, things really became destructive in my body, and it messed with my mind because I was like the guy, I was the guy that everybody wanted to be next to for years. He's the DJ, and then he's the guy running the big station in Miami, and people wanted to be close to me. But what happens when you go from walking onto crutches and then into a wheelchair, people start moving away from you. So it really messed with my mind. It
And
was
also
pretty
your
hard.
identity, your whole identity was
Oh,
wrapped up in your career.
it was scary. I'm married. I've got a wife and kids, and I didn't know what was going to happen. I mean, MS kills people. So for 8 years, I was getting beat up pretty bad. But when I first got diagnosed, there were only like 4 or 5 medicines for MS. Fast forward 4 or 5 years later, now there's 7 or 8 medicines. And so the doctor noticed that nothing was changing, that I continued to digress. And he said, you need to change this medicine. Let's go on to something else. And then he said something, and this is in my book. He said, I want you to take vitamin D. I believe that vitamin D, that MS patients have a serious lack of vitamin D in their system. Where does vitamin D come from? It comes from the sun. And I lived in Florida. I thought, well, that's crazy. If vitamin D was supposed to be good, why is it helping me now? It's supposed to be helping me. I'm from Florida. I lived there forever. So I fought him for a long time. I took the medicine change. 6 months later, my wife said, you've got to take the vitamin D. He says it for a reason. So a combination of the medicine change, and then 6 months later, after taking the vitamin D, the level of my progression, the progression of my disease leveled off, and I wasn't going down as quickly. And I felt rejuvenated. I thought, wait a minute, if I'm not going to die, maybe I should start doing other things. Maybe I could come up with something else. In fact, my doctor even encouraged me, do some brain work. He wanted me to download computer games. Let's get your brain back, because he believes you can rewire a lot of what's going on up there. And I can tell you that I have rewired a lot of what's going on with my brain. So I get the disease, I get the medicine, I get better. I start thinking I need to do something to get this brain going again. And a friend of my radio past reaches out. He was the promoter. You see the Grammys. Artists get awards. They get their Grammys because their songs are on the radio. But remember, people have to get those songs on the radio. There's a whole crew of promoters out there that work very, very hard to get those songs on the radio so the guys can win their Grammys. Well, my friend, Vince Pellegrino, used to have the biggest presentation at the awards ceremony for those guys in America. Every year he'd have this big show where he'd present these guys awards for working so hard to make these guys big stars. And I disappeared from my work when I left, and I'd been gone for about 8 years. And he said, I want you to come back to New York because I want you to have a Lifetime Achievement Award. So he brings me out to New York, brings my family to New York, and I get this award, and I'm juiced. I'm thinking, man, this is great. This is good stuff. But then I go to breakfast the next morning with my friend Vince, and he says, I'm dying. I'll be dead soon. And the only reason I brought you out here is because I want you to come back and do something. I don't know if it can be in the business, but I know you. I don't want you sitting back the way you've been sitting back for the last 8 years. You need to come up with a new you. So my friend Vince passed away, and I wanted to do radio. I wanted to be in the music industry again. I'd set records. I had produced records. But 8 years had gone by. This is a very fluid business. I could offer nothing to anyone at that point. And then I thought, why don't I write this story and tell my story and then get to the part where my friend Vince helps me out and brings me back from nowhere land. And so that's what the book, Come Get Me Mother, I'm Through, is all about. It tells about my radio career. It tells about all the fun I had and everything. And then it talks about my diagnosis. It talks about the medicine problems that I was having, that when the medicine changed. Talks about my friend Vince. And then I've learned how to become a writer. I needed to be able to get what was in here onto paper. Now, remember, radio DJs have a lot to say, but it's a lot different than writing. I can tell a great story and I can use all sorts of funky words and that, but to write these things down to where they make sense is a different process. So when I decided to write my book, I hired a writing coach. Her name is Carrie Flanagan. She's got a book out. It's called The Guide to Writing, The Guide to Magazine Article Writing by Carrie Flanagan. I hired her to teach me how to write, teach me how to take these radio stories and turn them into words you could put in print. She made me read books for 6 months because you have to learn how to do this before I can talk to you. So I read and I studied. And then when we finally sat down and talked, she taught me how to do it. And so 6 months of learning how to do it, 6 months of research, and another 6 months of writing brought my memoir, Come Get Me Mother, I'm Through. So that's what I did. I had to come up with something brand new, and writing was unique for me because telling a story is much different than writing the story. Then that spawned me because I'd already begun writing and I was in the groove. And remember, it's like anything else. When you first learn how to do it, you want to practice. And writers will tell you the best way to hone your skill is to practice every day. I write every day. Even if I don't have a topic, if I have nothing to write about, I'll sit down and I'll just make something up and I just write because you have to hone that skill. So I got in the groove of writing my memoir. And then I had a story happen between my father and I. My radio career began because my father came home one day and said he was working at a radio station as a newsman, an old school news guy, and in the 1960s and 70s on the radio, early 70s. And he came home and he said, they need you to babysit at the radio station. And when I was in high school, and this is when I was 17 years old, and when I was 17, I would babysit my parents' friends' kids to make extra money. So my dad said he wanted me to babysit at the radio station. I thought I was going to go get the general manager's kids and take them on babysit. Well, when I got to the radio station, he said, no, you're here because you're going to babysit the God show on Sunday morning. Because what they did was they recorded all the services at the churches around town and they played them on Sunday mornings and nobody wanted the job. So they went out and found a little high school boy. But you see, to play the tapes, you still have to say the station identification. And so the first time I put the headphones on and I was really nervous, and I remember it distinctly what I said, you're listening to KRLN, Canyon City, Colorado, the station with the news reputation. And hearing that for the first time made me go, I was on the radio. Now, it was pretty cool. And it was a very small station in Canyon City, Colorado. There's only one station in Canyon City, Colorado, and it was the station that I was on. And so that's where I got my start. My dad, was fortunate enough to know the GM well enough to offer his kid up to go be the guy on Sunday morning. And that's how I got started. But, it takes a lot to get to the big time. Mm-hmm. And so I went to college after my high school time. And I went to college for 2.5 years to study radio broadcasting. And then I decided I was going to see if I could get me a job. And I put out a bunch of audition tapes and got one in Knoxville, Tennessee. But on the way out to Knoxville, I had to come up with a radio name because you couldn't call a guy Kim Curry on the radio. That's not Kim. You can't call a guy Kim. This was the 1970s. So I thought, I'm going to be on the radio at 10 o'clock at night. So why don't I call myself Night Smoke? So I drive up to the radio station, and I remember that vividly. I drive up to the station in Knoxville, Tennessee, WKVQ, 15Q Knoxville. And I open up the door, and there's a receptionist at a desk, and there's a big fat guy behind her with curly hair and a Hawaiian shirt. And I introduced myself to the young lady. I said, hello, ma'am, my name is Night Smoke. I'm your new nighttime DJ. And the big fat guy says, well, if it isn't Kid Curry. And I said, Kid Curry? Well, see, he is an old-time Western bank robber in American history. Kid Curry and Hannibal Hayes were Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. So when I was a kid, I didn't like being called Kid Curry. So I said to the guy, I hate that name. People have called me that all my life. I hate that name. And he says, well, then I won't sign your check. And I said, Kid Curry it is. So there is only one Kid Curry in American radio broadcasting, and it was me because of that big fat guy in Knoxville. But then 6 months later, I ended up in Miami, Florida, working for some geniuses of the business, guys who are legends, and everybody knows who they are in America, and probably quite a few people in Canada do too. Jerry Clifton and Bill Tanner were the two guys I ended up working with in Miami, and got under their wing in the 1970s, and then ended up running their radio station in the 1990s and took it to bigger success than it had ever had. So it was quite shocking to turn around and become a writer, but it's worked out for me because in fact, this morning, as I told you this morning, I finished my third book. It took me 6 months. I've been working on it since June, but I finished this morning at 5:15 in the morning. So I've got my third book finished now. So this all started because I had to come up with something new, and writing is it.
Well, you definitely have a fascinating story, and congratulations on the new book. That's so exciting. So that will be your third book. Do you have a title for it yet?
I do. The Death of Fairness.
So Death of Fairness is the second book that you wrote.
That's my second book. Now that book is about, in America in 1987, President Ronald Reagan rescinded a thing called the Fairness Doctrine. It was the rule that required equal time for contrasting points of view. Now, when you take out equal time for contrasting points of view, that gives Rush Limbaugh the right to sit there and spew conspiracy theories and accusations and lies over and over. So when Reagan,
journalism, basically,
it really basically was. Now, the good thing about your country is you have a fairness doctrine. So you don't have the Rush Limbaugh type broadcasters up there. You have something that is basically says that you can't lie. And you don't have the division in your country that we have in our country. And I believe
not yet, thank God.
Well, lies will cause that. Not being able to debate conspiracies and lies will cause that. And that's what's happened to my country. And so The Death of Fairness is about what happened to a small American town and its only radio station after Ronald Reagan rescinded the Fairness Doctrine in 1987. My third book is called The Return of Fairness.
Oh.
And I don't know, and it's much more in depth. My second book was just a quick short story, but it spawned a real story in my mind where I've got a young woman who at the age of 2 is diagnosed with eidetic memory. That's the chess master's super memory where they can remember everything. It's not photographic memory. There is no such thing as photographic memory. Eidetic memory is an actual thing. She's diagnosed with that at the age of 2. She grows up and she becomes so good in school that the teachers want her to teach because she knows so much. She becomes friends with this little girl and they become like a team and they get on the debate team and they start talking about this fairness doctrine and how come Ronald Reagan rescinded the fairness doctrine. Now, that also caused the radio station in the hometown to dedicate itself to syndicated radio. That means Rush Limbaugh comes out of a syndication. He's in one town and he broadcasts to a bunch of different stations. Yes. Well, this particular station in their hometown was taken over by syndication. All the hometown guys got run off and the syndication took over. Through the process, it ended up, I don't know if I want to go any further because that's where the real fun starts.
Yeah, don't go further. Everyone's going to have to buy the book.
Well, yeah, but I can tell you that she figures it out. She grows up to be a very smart young woman and gets in the halls of Congress and creates all sorts of trouble to the return of fairness. So
this sounds like such an important topic. I'm actually surprised that I've never heard of this before until I was reading about your book. It seems completely like out of this world to me.
And I can tell you that there's always yearly, there's discussion in the halls of Congress to bring it back.
Yeah.
So, but I believe the division you see in America right now is simply because of that one decision and you didn't know about it and people around me don't know about it. That's what bothers me. That's why this first book, and that's why I appreciate getting publicity on this first book. When I talk about it on Facebook, it blows up. People talk about it all the time. In fact, this morning, someone said something. I said, just bring back the fairness doctrine. You won't have that problem. But the Republican Party doesn't want it back.
Well, and especially with cancel culture, because now if you don't agree with somebody's opinion, they just block you. Social media outlets are notorious for suspending people's account or kicking them off if they voice an opinion that's not in line with the company's
Well,
politics or with popular opinion.
I think there's a lie is a lie.
Yeah.
And I think if you're going to lie, then I should have the right to prove that you're lying. If it's on American broadcast airwaves. Now, see, that's the whole point of this whole thing. On American broadcast airwaves. Because remember, you have cable, you have satellite, but I'm only talking about American broadcast airwaves.
Yes.
So if you could confine the fairness doctrine on the American broadcast airwaves, at least that way, America would have a sanctuary. They know where they could go to see the truth and hear the truth. So anyways, I'm quite passionate about this topic, but anyway.
No, well, it's quite an important topic. And now that I'm aware of it, I am passionate about it too.
Well, you're going to like my little girl. You're going to like Molly Alvin.
So
yes.
Molly is the protagonist.
Molly's just because she can invoke and take all this information in. She's a great kid. You're going to like her.
That's amazing. I am going to like her. I can't wait to read her. How long until this book is out?
It's going into the process. With any luck, within the next 4 or 5 months, you'll hear about it.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, keep me updated because I can always update the links. So yes, so now the important stuff. Where can everybody find your books, The Death of Fairness and Come Get Me, Mother, I'm Through?
Everything's on Amazon. You can also find them at Audible. And there's other e-stories is another place you can find them. There's a variety of different Audible sources you can find them on.
Great. And of course, we'll have all the links below to make them easily accessible for everybody. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story, Kim.
You told me, wait, you told me you only did 16 of these. You're getting real good at this. Okay, I'm just saying.
Thank you.
Okay.
Your story is very inspiring, and it's amazing that you found this passion for getting the truth out about this Fairness Act, because it's something really important as the country is becoming more divided. It's becoming more and more of a necessity to get to the crux of truth. So this is like an amazing crusade that you're on, and it's a fantastic new purpose. So thank you so much for sharing with us and for educating us about this topic.
When you lose trust and truth, you have a problem, and we're dealing with it now in America.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. I really appreciate it. Thank you everyone in the interweb for tuning in. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. And I hope this encourages you to do something you never thought you would do. You never know where it will lead you. Leave a comment. Let us know what it is and where it took you. Thanks and have a fabulous day.